Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang is pushing an idea you probably have never heard of before. It's called universal basic income. He wants to pay every American adult $1,000 a month. That's where we pick up our conversation. Now, you have ideas that are definitely different. One that really stands out is your intent to pay a universal basic income. It would pay $1,000 a month to every American adult, regardless of income. Isn't this just pandering? Why do this?
Well, it's actually vital to the continued prosperity of our country. Because if you look at what's happening again, we're automating away millions of jobs in agriculture, retail, call centers, truck driving. I mean, we just drove past Iowa 80, the biggest truck stop in the country. And my friends in technology say that we're going to have self-driving trucks on the highways in 5 to 10 years. So what we need to do is we need to think bigger about the kind of economy we're going to fashion for ourselves and our children so that people here in Iowa can prosper even as technology starts to consume more and more jobs.
Well, how do you respond to critics who say this will just make Americans more dependent on the federal government and create an unnecessary entitlement program?
It's actually quite the opposite. So if you imagine everyone here in Iowa getting $1,000 a month, the vast majority of that money would stay right here in Iowa. It would get spent on car repairs, tutoring and food for your kids, home repairs, the occasional night out, and then all the businesses here in Iowa, the Main Street businesses, would have to hire more people to meet more demand. My plan would pump $16 billion into the Iowa consumer economy, create 40,000 new jobs, because most of that money would stay right here in Iowa. So instead of making people dependent, it actually makes people independent.
Now, this would be a paradigm shift for American economics, really. I've never heard this talked about by anyone in Congress. Healthcare reform, climate change policies, immigration, family leave policies, marijuana legalization. Sure, we've heard all of those things. So all of which you support these relatively progressive positions as well. How do you enact this, I guess, with Democratic and Republican support that'll be needed when the current body politic is so entrenched? And isn't this more ideological than realistic?
Not at all. If you look at the history of this plan, Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of the country. Martin Luther King was for it. 1,000 economists signed a study saying this would be great for the economy. And it passed the House of Representatives twice in 1971 under Richard Nixon, of all people. And it's been policy for about 36 years in one very deeply conservative state where everyone in Alaska gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And it's wildly popular, it's created thousands of jobs, improved children's health. We can do for the rest of the country, starting right here in Iowa, what we're doing in Alaska, because technology is the oil of the 21st century.
But you still have to get Democrats and Republicans to go along. That's a tough road to hoe, right?
Well, it's not really left or right, it's forward. So you can imagine many, many Democrats and progressives getting behind this policy, but you can also see many, many conservatives and libertarians getting behind it because what they really dislike is new government bureaucracy. What they like is individual economic freedom and autonomy.
But wouldn't they argue that this is an unnecessary bureaucracy that you're creating?
There's much less bureaucracy when you're simply just giving people a dividend than there is among the 126 current welfare programs. So conservatives and libertarians are attracted to it for different reasons. But if you look at the net impact of this plan, it would be a wealth transfer from places like Seattle and San Francisco that are sucking up value out of places like Iowa and returning that value to the people of Iowa. So that's something that conservatives and progressives alike will get behind.
Now, you would pay for this with a value-added tax. A lot of countries have this in place already. It's like a national sales tax. Democrats and Republicans have both floated this idea in the past with no success. It really hasn't really been introduced. It's always been talked about in campaign rhetoric. Do you want this to replace the income tax system? And if so, what changes would you do to the income tax system by implementing this value-added tax?
Sure. So the big trap America is in right now is that more and more value is getting sucked up by Amazon and Google and these big tech companies that just don't pay a lot of taxes because income taxes don't really capture that value. Amazon will literally go a quarter and say, didn't make any money this quarter, no taxes necessary. So what a value-added tax will do is it'll allow the people here in Iowa to get a sliver of every Amazon transaction, every Google search, and keep that value right here in Iowa.
Well, I get that. It's a consumption tax. Is what you buy, you're paying for extra. But what does it do to the income tax system?
So a value-added tax is a much more efficient way to generate revenue than an income tax. It's one reason why every other advanced economy already has it. Now, I'm for more progressive income taxes generally. At this point, we've let it go too far in the other direction. But over time, the goal would be for something like a value-added tax to replace
So you would,
an income
you would
tax.
phase out an income tax over time if you were to implement a value-added tax.
Yes, with the right circumstances, that is what you would try and do, because the last thing you want to do is discourage work and discourage work-like arrangements, which income taxes do essentially make happen. And one of the things the Democrats, in my opinion, are making a mistake on is that they're trying to rebalance things by saying essentially like, hey, we're going to take money back through just income taxes and possibly a wealth tax. That's not actually the most efficient way to go.
Now, you propose something else. By the way, it's a 10% value-added tax that you're actually proposing.
Yeah, which would be half the European level. It would generate $800 billion in new revenue. It would be enough to fund a $1,000 dividend for every adult here in Iowa.
And it wouldn't necessarily be food. People don't understand. It's like it's for more personal items. We're talking like people want to buy a stereo or a car. Things get added for basically on more non-necessity items, essentially.
Yeah, and that's right. And a lot of the value, it would literally be for like every tech transaction and like all the innovation in artificial intelligence, but it would apply to certain other goods you just named as well.
That's the second part of my conversation with Andrew Yang. That brings us to our question of the week. What do you think about a policy that would have the federal government pay every American adult $1,000 a month? Send your answer by email to fortherecord@whbf.com or respond to this post on Facebook at the Local 4 News, WHBF TV page, or on my page.